I am disappointed with whatever spectacle my eyes and ears and my senses were just assailed by. I am disappointed. I am disappointed in multiple things. I am disappointed in multiple concepts. But I'm fundamentally disappointed. And my disappointment springs from the fact that these United States, which were conceived from virtue, which were conceived from hardship, which were conceived from the intellectual essence of that European Enlightenment, which translated over to Americanism, and which was conceived on the frontier where there was nothing, there was no security, there was no guarantee of protection, there was no guarantee of another day, there was simply the will. I am disappointed that the presidential debate of the nation, who was conceived with all those things in mind, turned out how it turned out. The most unique experiment on the face of this earth. The most unique experiment. And what happens? What happens? The two people who are now coveting the title of leader for that experiment, of chief scientist for that experiment, apparently don't have the intelligence, the tact, nor the patience to hold down the job for a very long time, or to even do as good as they're meant to do. You know, I'm speechless. I'm speechless, everyone. Maybe my speechlessness stems from the fact that this is a deviation from the norm, and every deviation from the norm shocks us. You know, deviating from tradition shocks us. But I think a lot of my speechlessness comes from the fact that I know this is a country who has produced men of great character, of a great caliber, who has done so much better than what I just saw over the past hour and a half. Maybe that's where my speechlessness comes. In fact, no, I know that's where my speechlessness emerges from. It emerges from the assurance and the knowledge that America has always been better than what I just saw. The display that I just saw is not America. But the display in the first 2020 presidential debate between Vice President Biden and President Donald Trump was an antithesis to every single thing this country is predicated upon. Every single effort, every single ounce of energy that was put in to produce this American experiment. It is an absolute antithesis. This was a nation forged by men who had nothing but courage and ragtag weapons, who were going up against the biggest empire in the history of the world, which had dominated the seas, had dominated lands, and if there had been an air forces back then, certainly would have dominated the air. These largest superpower, a king who wielded so much influence, whether it be cultural or political, these ragtag colonists who didn't have a chance, or didn't appear to have a chance, says, you know what, I'm going to go up against this because I understand that there are certain things about my human being, about my identity, that cannot be suppressed by you, and that will be acknowledged by you. And if you don't acknowledge those things about who I am as a human being, my identity, then I will thwart you, and I will institute a government that shall and that will. I will institute a government that shall recognize my individuality, that shall recognize my freedom, that shall recognize my right to property, that shall do these things, which are natural truths that we understand are natural truths. That is the kind of courage that forged America, and that courage was absolutely not on display tonight. How can you let this country be transferred from courageous hands, heroic hands, to the hands of people who are false orators, or the hands of people who don't abide by the laws of logic, the hands of people who engage in a pernicious form of false advertising, all in the name of having a debate, which wasn't a debate at all, which was simply a public speaking competition? How can you do that, my friends? This is an absolute outrage. And I'm trying to be calm, I'm trying to be moderate, I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to play my role as a right-leaning person, I'm doing my best. But guess what, people? I have an epiphany. I'm just sick of it. I am just sick of it. Because this is precisely what America gets every 4 or 2 years. And guess what? It may not be as pronounced as what we just saw. It may not be as nasty as what we just saw. It may not be as vitriolic as we just saw. It may not be as astute as what we just saw. It may have an air of professionalism. It may have an air of, an air of being of a higher order. But we saw the same kind of crap back when Obama debated Romney. The same kind of insult, laden ad hominem crap. But it was of a different vein, though. It was of a significantly different vein. This is perhaps the most pronounced, nastiest fight in the 21st century or modern American history. I mean, there have been nastier fights amongst presidents, of course. Go back to the fights between Adams and Jefferson. I mean, there's been nastier fights. But on a debate stage, this is definitely the nastiest fight. And we have to ask ourselves, how have we gone from men of courage like Patrick Henry, like Thomas Paine, like John Jay, like Thomas Jefferson, like John Quincy Adams? How have we gone from people like that? Hell, how have right-leaning contemporary individuals, right-leaning contemporary minds, gone from people like Ronald Reagan, Barry Goldwater, to what we see right now? Bush v. Reagan in the late 1980s was nothing like this. It was not only a civil, but it was also a facts and policy-oriented debate. Very few personal jabs. Very few. There were a few, sarcastic remarks, but very few personal jabs. I saw someone on Twitter saying this reflects the state of our political, our discourse, where everyone's just talking. But no, it's different than that, because people are talking, they're having conversations. But the question is, what kind of conversations are they having? The question is, are these kind of conversations rising to the occasion, rising to the level that they need to rise to reflect the true spirit of Americanism? And you may be expecting me to talk about the content of the debate. Look, you can go somewhere else and hear that kind of stuff. Let's talk about the principle that this debate, that this exhibition, I would say, has shown. Let's talk about the principles that it has shown. Let's talk about the deviation that it has shown. Let's not try to pretend that this is nothing more than a mass deviation from a righteous disposition. Let's try not to pretend that this debate was nothing more than, no, it was a shit show. Okay, it was a shit. But why was it a shit show, though? You cannot you cannot solve problems without getting to the root of them. Every problem has a root that you have to examine. So why was it a shit show? It was a shit show because Americans right now are largely not asking for anything better. It was a shit show because the market of politics right now is predicated upon anger, rage, and partisanship, and not cooperation and depth. It's predicated upon brevity, not depth. I had someone the other day say, "Oh, Christian, you should have more brevity." You know what? I get that, but the reason I don't have a lot of brevity in my commentary is because when you have brevity, that can lead way to stupidity. That can lead way to complacency. You have to continue to push your human condition if you're ever going to grow as both an American and as a human being. This goes beyond nationality. It's about you being a human being and growing as a human being. We have to begin pushing the scale elsewhere. Because in the 80s, this display that we saw tonight would have been unconscionable. That's not to romanticize the 80s. There were problems in the 80s. There were problems in the 90s. There were problems 7 years ago. There are problems. There have always been problems in the United States. There are no area devoid of problems. But this is a huge problem. This is not just a problem. This is a calamity of catastrophic scale. This is a calamitous occasion, my friends. We have to demand better. You can start by rejecting the tides partisanship, beginning to embrace your fellow political opponents, contemporaries, not as human opponents, not as opponents of some sort of higher good, but simply people who disagree on how to pursue a higher good. Not as opponents of humanity, not as people who are killers or evil. You should not malign your opponents. You should see them as human beings. You need to begin changing your language. Stop referring to both sides of the aisle as monolithic. Oh, the right wing. There is no right wing. There are right-leaning individuals. Get to know them. Talk to them. Be human. For once. Be human for once. It is just... It's unconscionable. 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 We deserve so much better. This country deserves so much better. The memory of this country deserves so much better. The honor of our founding fathers deserves so much better. You see, regardless of who wins this election, the problem is that it's not about who wins the ballot. It's about who wins the soul. And the soul is simply how it manifests in how we conduct ourselves every day. So I just beg you, if you get nothing else from this video, conduct yourself in a reasonable manner. Stop groupthink. Stop the partisanship. Channel that spirit of Americanism, which established this great country. And have an open mind, please. That's all for now, everyone. I'll make a more presentable video later, but until next time, stay pensive.